Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And while you're at it, let me know, would you ever give up something as precious as a wedding ring for a stranger? Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next story. Now, let me take you to the iron market, where chains clattered louder than coins, and one woman's sacrifice would change everything. The iron market was alive with noise, but not the kind of noise that brought joy. It was the clatter of chains, the clink of copper coins, and the restless shuffle of desperate people pressed together in a sea of shadows. The air reeked of rust and damp straw, heavy with despair. Overhead, the sky hung low, smudged with gray clouds that promised another storm before nightfall. Elara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she guided her steps through the uneven cobblestones. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the crowd, each step bringing her closer to the platform in the square center, a raised stone slab, stained dark with old blood. She had not meant to stop. She had only come for cloth and food, nothing more. But something about the air that morning felt different. Heavier. On the platform, 3 figures knelt in chains, but only one drew every gaze like iron pulling a compass. The Alpha Slave. He was massive, even bowed under the weight of the iron collar and shackles that bound him. His wrists were raw, iron biting deep into flesh, yet he kept his back straight. His head was held high, not in arrogance but in defiance, as though refusing to give the market the satisfaction of seeing him broken. White hair fell across his face, unevenly cut, the mark of deliberate humiliation. Across his bare arms, strange black markings curved like living ink, shifting faintly in the morning light. His presence was not that of a slave. He radiated danger and dignity. "Behold," called Overseer Draxus, his voice booming across the market. His gold-threaded robe gleamed against the filth at his feet. "A wolf of the Shadowborn line, an alpha, captured beyond our borders. His people refused tribute, so now he pays the price. Strong enough to tear 5 men apart with his bare hands, but bound by blessed iron that robs him of his power. Today, he is property." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Fear. Curiosity. Hunger. "The bidding begins at 50 silver marks." Draxus bellowed. No one spoke. The silence stretched thin. 50 silver could buy a family food for a year. 50 silver could mend a roof, save a farm, start a new life. Who would spend it on a beast they feared would kill them the moment the chains broke? Elara's breath caught as the Alpha's pale eyes suddenly lifted, and found hers. It was like being struck. His gaze was winter, sharp and unyielding, cutting straight through the noise, the crowd, her very skin. For a moment she forgot where she stood. His eyes held pride, yes, but also something more. Something ancient and unsettling. Recognition. Her hand twitched against her chest, finding the simple band of metal hanging from a cord beneath her cloak. Her wedding ring. The only thing she still kept from her past life, her old marriage. A marriage that had ended in betrayal and abandonment, leaving scars deeper than the ones shackled around the Alpha's wrists. She had thought she would never part with it. Not because she still loved the man who gave it to her, but because throwing it away felt like discarding her own history. 40 silver. Draxus barked, irritation creeping into his voice. No one moved. "He'll kill anyone who buys him," someone muttered from the crowd. "Shadowborn alphas don't submit. He is bound with blessed iron." Draxus snapped. "He cannot fight." 30 silver. Still silence. The overseer's smile faltered. His eyes darted across the crowd, desperate now. 20 silver. The Alpha never looked away from Elara. And Elara, she could not look away from him. 10 silver, then. Draxus shouted, his voice straining. 10, before I send him to the labor camps. The labor camps. Places of starvation, beatings, and death. The words slipped from her lips before her mind caught up. I offer this. Gasps broke through the market. Ilara's fingers pulled the cord from around her neck, lifting the small, weathered ring into the light. The band was simple, unpolished, and bent slightly from years of wear. But in that moment, it gleamed like treasure. Draxus froze. His greedy eyes widened, his breath catching as though he'd never seen such a thing. That ring, where did you get it? It was my husband's, Ilara said softly, her voice carrying across the silence. It's all I have left. The overseer licked his lips, reaching for it. Worth more than silver. Worth much more. You would give it for this beast? Ilara's hands trembled. Her heart hammered. The Alpha's gaze pierced her like a spear, as if daring her to drop the ring, or to commit fully. She pushed the band into Draxus's waiting palm. The overseer grinned with triumph, holding it aloft. So be it. But the moment his greedy fingers touched the ring, the Alpha moved. Despite the chains, despite the blessed iron, he surged forward with a speed that made the crowd scream. The shackles rattled violently, iron screaming against stone. His voice thundered across the market in words that struck Ilara like fire. She gave what bound her past to free me. By the laws older than this empire, I claim her. She is mine. My mate. The crowd erupted. Cries of shock, disbelief, outrage. Some stumbled back in fear, others shouted curses, but Ilara stood frozen, her pulse roaring in her ears. The overseer dropped the ring in shock, nearly stumbling off the platform. What nonsense is this? But the Alpha did not falter. His silver eyes burned brighter than the storm clouds above as he repeated in the common tongue, his voice carrying with absolute certainty. She freed me with a bond of blood and vow. Before all who witness, she is my mate. The square shook with the uproar. People shouted, guards pressed forward, and Ilara's knees went weak beneath her. She hadn't meant for this to happen. She hadn't meant for anything beyond a single act of mercy. And yet, as his words wrapped around her, a spark ignited deep within her chest, terrifying, unexplainable, undeniable. Her life would never be the same. The market square dissolved into chaos. Gasps became shouts, shouts became curses, and curses became a storm of panic as people scrambled away from the platform. Mothers dragged children toward alleys, merchants slammed their shutters, and guards tightened their grips on iron-tipped spears. The overseer, Draxus, flushed crimson with outrage, clutching the ring Ilara had offered like a lifeline. He lies. Draxus bellowed, spit flying from his mouth. He dares twist old wolf law to bind an innocent woman. She is no mate of his, she is nothing. But the Alpha did not flinch. Shackled though he was, he stood taller than any man in the square, silver eyes burning like stars on a winter night. He turned his head slowly, deliberately, until those eyes landed on Ilara again. She gave me freedom, he said, his voice low but carrying through the noise. And I give her bond. The words settled over her like a cloak, heavy and suffocating. Ilara staggered back a step, her heart pounding in her chest. Mate? The word throbbed inside her head, foreign yet familiar, like something she'd always known but never dared to say aloud. No. Draxus snarled, clutching the ring tighter. She gave me the payment, not you. By law, you are mine to sell. Guards, chain him tighter. Muzzle him. The guards rushed forward, their boots thundering against the stone. Iron chains rattled as they advanced, spears glinting in the dull light. The Alpha bared his teeth in something that was not quite a smile. Try. The first guard jabbed his spear forward, but the Alpha moved, even bound, even weakened, his reflexes were inhuman. He twisted, letting the spear glance harmlessly off his shoulder, then wrenched the chain on his wrists taut. The guard was thrown off balance, crashing to the ground. The crowd screamed, scattering further, terrified that the beast would break loose. But Alara could not move. Her feet felt rooted to the stone, her body caught between terror and fascination. She could not tear her eyes away from him. Draxus shrieked like a wounded boar. "Restrain him. Break him." Another guard swung a chain toward the Alpha's throat, but in the blink of an eye, the man was on the ground, groaning in pain. The overseer's face drained of color as he realized what the crowd already had. The Alpha was dangerous even without his strength. And still, through it all, his eyes never left Alara. "You should run," a woman whispered near her, tugging her child close. "If you don't, he'll take you with him. Wolves don't let go once they claim." Alara's chest tightened painfully. Why me? She hadn't meant for this. She hadn't wanted this. She only wanted to keep him from the labor camps, from death. Giving up the ring was supposed to be an ending, the final thread tying her to her past, cut and gone. But instead, it had bound her to something far larger, something terrifying. The Alpha's voice rolled across the market again, commanding silence. "By the laws of my kind, she is mine. My mate. To harm her is to declare war on me. To touch her is to invite death." The words sent a shiver through the crowd. Even those who didn't believe in wolf law shifted nervously, unwilling to test him. Draxus trembled with rage, clutching the ring like it might burn him. This is madness. She is nothing. A widow, a seamstress, a nobody. You think claiming her will change your chains? You think. Enough, the Alpha growled, his voice deep and resonant. The very air seemed to vibrate with it. For the first time, Draxus faltered, his bluster shrinking before the sheer force of that sound. Alara swallowed hard, heat prickling behind her eyes. Widow. Nobody. Those words cut deeper than the overseer knew. He had said them like a weapon, but they were truths she had whispered to herself for years. Her marriage had ended in betrayal, her days spent stitching for others while her own heart unraveled thread by thread. The ring had been her anchor to pain, and now it was gone. And somehow, impossibly, the Alpha had seen more in her than she had seen in herself. "Take her away from here," Draxus spat at two guards, gesturing toward Alara. "She'll fetch a better price once the beast is broken." The guards hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances. To seize the woman he had just claimed was to test wolf law, and even the bravest of men knew that was no small risk. But Draxus's glare left no room for defiance. They moved toward her. Alara's breath caught. She stumbled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd had formed a wide circle around the platform, no one daring to step closer. Her hands shook violently, her heart hammering against her ribs. And then it happened. The Alpha wrenched at his chains with a guttural roar, the sound ripping through the square. Blessed iron groaned, cracking under the sheer force of his will. With one final pull, the shackles shattered. Fragments of glowing metal flew across the platform like sparks from a forge. The crowd erupted in panic. The guards froze, their courage draining away. Draxus staggered backward, clutching the ring as though it could shield him from the monster now free. The Alpha rose to his full height, no longer hunched by chains. He towered over them all, a living storm of scars, fury, and raw power. Shadows seemed to bend toward him, as if even the light recognized his dominance. And still, his eyes found hers. "You freed me," he said, his voice low, dangerous, unshakable. "And now nothing will separate us. Not law. Not chains. Not fate." Alara's knees gave way, and she sank to the cold stone. The bond pulsed inside her chest, hot and demanding, terrifying in its intensity. She could feel his presence like a second heartbeat, thundering alongside her own. Somewhere in the square, a voice cried out, "It's true. He's claimed her." And just like that, the division began. Some shouted in horror, calling her cursed. Others whispered reverently, convinced destiny itself had spoken. The air thickened with the tension of a pack on the edge of tearing itself apart. Elara pressed her trembling hands to the ground, staring up at the Alpha who had claimed her with words that could never be taken back. Her life was no longer her own. And deep down, beneath the fear, a question burned that she could not silence. Had she given up her past, only to step into a future she was never ready for? The market square emptied slowly, like a wound bleeding itself dry. Merchants fled to their stalls, citizens vanished into the narrow alleys, and whispers slithered through the air long after the overseer had stormed off in humiliation. Only broken chains littering the platform bore witness to what had happened. Elara clutched her shawl tighter as she stumbled toward the edge of the crowd. Her pulse still thundered in her ears, her chest aching with something she could not name. Fear, yes. But also something else. Something that made her skin burn every time her gaze drifted to him. The Alpha stood unbowed among the ruins of his captivity. No chains. No overseer. Just a tall, scarred man radiating a power that made even the bravest keep their distance. Yet he was not looking at them. He was looking at her. Always her. You shouldn't stay, a woman hissed as she brushed past Elara, clutching a basket to her chest. Run. Leave the city before nightfall. His claim will bring enemies to your door. Elara tried to speak, but her throat locked up. She wanted to say she had not asked for this, that she had not wanted this bond. But the words refused to form. Because deep down, something inside her whispered otherwise. The Alpha moved toward her, each step deliberate. The crowd parted like water before him, no one daring to block his path. When he finally stood before her, towering, shadow clinging to him like a cloak, he spoke her name as if he had known it all his life. Elara. The sound of it on his lips sent a shiver through her spine. You don't know me, she whispered. His silver eyes softened, though his voice remained as unyielding as stone. I know enough. The ring you gave was more than metal. It was your past. You offered it freely, and by the old laws, that offering binds us. I didn't mean. You did. His words cut sharp, leaving no space for denial. You chose, even if you do not yet understand why. Elara's knees wavered. She turned sharply, forcing her steps toward the alley that led home. She couldn't breathe under his gaze, couldn't think with his voice in her head. Every beat of her heart echoed his claim. Mate. The word haunted her. Behind her, the Alpha's voice carried. Whether you run or stay, the bond has been forged. You cannot undo it. Far beyond the square, in the dense woods that marked the edge of Valen's territory, another set of ears caught the news. Wolves ran fast, their paws carrying word across borders swifter than human tongues ever could. By dusk, the tale of the Alpha slave's freedom and his mate claim on a human woman had already spread to rival packs. In a dimly lit hall carved into the side of a mountain, a rival Alpha sat listening, his golden eyes narrowing as his scout knelt before him. They say he broke the chains, even bound by blessed iron, the scout reported. Claimed her before the entire market. She offered him a ring to buy his freedom. A slow smile crept across the rival Alpha's face. His teeth glinted like knives in the firelight. A ring, he mused. A human's vow, traded for a wolf's bond. The fool binds himself to weakness. The scout hesitated. Some say it is destiny. That the bond cannot be denied. Destiny, the Alpha spat the word like poison. No. It is opportunity. He was once a rival too strong to challenge. But now? He has chained himself to a human. He is vulnerable. The hall trembled with low growls as his pack stirred, hungry for blood. Gather the hunters, the rival Alpha ordered, his voice a snarl. We strike before his bond strengthens. Break the woman, and the slave will crumble. Then we will see who is destined. Ilara's home was a modest cottage at the edge of the city, walls patched with worn wood, roofs sagging from too many storms. It had always been a place of silence, a retreat where she tried to stitch her life back together after betrayal. But tonight, silence felt impossible. She lit a lantern and pressed her back against the door once she shut it, her breaths ragged. Her hand shook as she reached for the empty spot at her throat where the ring used to rest. Gone. The one tether to her old life. And yet, in its absence, she felt something else, a new tether, invisible but stronger. A pull in her chest that throbbed with each heartbeat. Her thoughts scattered when the shadows at the window shifted. She froze. Then the door creaked open. He entered. The Alpha filled the doorway, ducking slightly beneath the frame, his silver eyes gleaming in the dim light. He carried no chains now, only the weight of his presence, and it made the small cottage feel even smaller. You followed me, Ilara whispered, though it wasn't a question. I protect what is mine, he said simply. Her breath caught. I am not yours. He stepped closer, his voice lowering, more dangerous for its quiet. The bond says otherwise. Do you not feel it? The pull between us? Ilara swallowed hard, but she could not deny it. The tug in her chest, the way her skin prickled when he neared, the way her heart thundered when his voice brushed her name, it was real. Too real. Why me? She asked finally, her voice trembling. Why claim me? For a moment, his expression softened, shadows slipping from his face to reveal something raw, almost vulnerable. Because fate chose you. And I obey fate. Before Ilara could respond, a sound shattered the fragile silence, the distant, echoing howl of wolves. Not one, but many. The Alpha stiffened, his jaw tightening. His eyes flashed with recognition, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. They come, he muttered. Ilara's stomach dropped. Who? Rivals, he answered, his voice grim. They know of you now. And they will not let this bond live unchallenged. Ilara's lantern flickered, shadows stretching across the walls like grasping hands. Fear gripped her throat, but beneath it, another sensation rose, the terrifying realization that her life was no longer her own. And that whatever came next, she would stand at the center of a storm she had never asked for. The howls grew closer.
They weren't the mournful calls of lone wolves roaming the night, they were sharp, coordinated, hunting cries. The sound curled through the narrow streets of the city like smoke, chilling every heart that heard it. Ilara's hands gripped the lantern until her knuckles went white. They can't come here, she whispered, though the words were more hope than truth. The Alpha moved to the window, his broad frame outlined in silver moonlight. His eyes glowed faintly, catching every flicker of shadow. They already have. As if to prove his words, another howl cut through the night, closer this time. Then the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against cobblestones. Ilara's stomach twisted. She took a step back, colliding with the wooden table at the center of the room. Why are they coming? She demanded. Why me? His gaze never left the window. Because to break you is to break me. The words struck deep. She wanted to argue, to deny his claim, but the truth pulsed inside her chest like a second heartbeat. Even now, she felt the bond thrumming, tugging her toward him, demanding she stand near. The Alpha turned suddenly, moving toward her with purposeful strides. He caught her trembling hands in his, rough skin warm against her cold fingers. Listen to me, he said firmly. You cannot run. They will send you anywhere. But if you stay close, if you trust me, I will not let them touch you. Ilara shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. I don't even know your name. His eyes softened for the briefest moment. Kaelin. Before she could respond, the door rattled violently, then burst inward. Splinters flew across the room as 3 figures lunged inside. Wolves. They weren't fully shifted, not yet, but their features were twisted by the change, glowing eyes, sharpened teeth, claws extending from human hands. Their snarls filled the cottage as they fanned out, circling the alpha and the woman he had claimed. Slave, one spat, golden eyes gleaming with cruel delight. We heard you found yourself a human toy. Kalen bared his teeth, stepping forward, his body shielding Alara. Leave now, and I may let you crawl back to your alpha. The intruders laughed, low and vicious. The leader, a tall wolf with a scar across his jaw, sneered. You were chained in the market hours ago. Now you speak as if you still wear a crown. You are nothing but a broken dog. Kalen moved before the words faded. He was a storm unleashed, shadows wrapping around him like armor. He struck the scarred wolf in the chest, sending him crashing into the far wall with a sickening crack. The other 2 lunged, claws flashing, but Kalen spun with inhuman speed, knocking one to the ground and catching the other by the throat. The cottage shook with the violence of it. Alara pressed herself against the table, her lantern toppling and spilling light across the floor. Her heart hammered so hard it hurt, fear and awe twisting together until she couldn't breathe. Kalen slammed the struggling wolf onto the floorboards, pinning him with a knee to the chest. His voice was a growl edged with command. Tell your alpha what you saw. Tell him I am free, and I will not yield. The wolf choked, eyes wild, then spat blood in defiance. You won't live long enough to prove it. With a snarl, Kalen flung him through the shattered doorway. The wolf scrambled to his feet, half crawling, half running into the night. The second followed, clutching his ribs, dragging the scarred one with him. Their retreating howls echoed through the streets. For a moment, silence reigned. The cottage lay in ruin, the door splintered, furniture overturned. Alara stood frozen, her chest heaving, her gaze locked on the alpha who now stood breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling like the sea after a storm. His silver eyes found hers, glowing with something more than fury now. Something dangerous. Something claiming. Alara's voice trembled. They'll be back. With more. Yes, Kalen said, not denying it. And stronger. He stepped closer, shadows still clinging faintly to his form. That is why we cannot stay here. Her stomach dropped. Leave? Where would we go? He studied her for a long moment, his gaze heavy with the weight of fate. To the mountains. To my people. If any remain loyal. Alara shook her head, backing up until she collided with the wall. No. This isn't my fight. I gave up the ring because I pitied you, not because... The words died in her throat as Kalen's hand came up, not touching, but hovering inches from her cheek. The bond flared at the nearness, heat rushing through her veins. Not because you chose me, he finished softly. And yet, your soul already answers mine. Deny it with your tongue, if you wish. But can you deny the way your heart beats in time with mine? Alara's breath caught, her chest aching at the truth of it. She hated it. She hated that she couldn't tear the invisible thread binding her to him. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. Neither did I, Kalen said, his voice low, roughened by something deeper than anger. But the bond doesn't care what we ask for. It only cares what is true. The bond pulsed again, stronger this time, like a drumbeat deep inside her bones. Alara pressed her palms against the wall, desperate for something solid to cling to. Outside, more howls split the night. Closer. Louder. Kalen's head snapped toward the sound, his expression hardening. They've called reinforcements. We must move now. He reached for her hand. She hesitated only a moment before his fingers wrapped around hers, strong and sure. The bond flared like fire at the contact, nearly buckling her knees. Where I go, Kalen said, his voice a vow, you go. And where you go, I will follow. This is the bond, Alara. You cannot run from it. She wanted to protest, but when she met his silver gaze, the words melted on her tongue. Against all logic, against all fear, she believed him. And as the rival wolves closed in around the cottage, their snarls echoing in the night, Alara realized that her choice at the market had done more than free a slave. It had lit a fire that could not be extinguished. The night no longer belonged to the city. The rival wolves' howls rippled through the air like hunting horns, echoing off stone walls and narrow alleys. Every bark, every snarl came closer, tightening the noose around Alara's small cottage. The lantern on her table guttered as if it too feared what stalked beyond the shattered doorway. Kalen's grip on her hand tightened. His voice was urgent but steady. "We can't stay. The longer we remain, the more of them will come. They mean to drown us in numbers." Alara's heart pounded painfully. She glanced at her cottage, the only home she had left. Every stitch in its curtains, every groove in its floorboards had been shaped by her own hands. She had thought she would end her life here, quietly, in obscurity. Now, its walls felt like a coffin closing in. "Where will we go?" she whispered. "To the mountains," Kalen said, his silver eyes flashing as moonlight spilled through the broken door. "The old wolf trails will hide us. But we must move now." Before she could argue, he pulled her into the night. The streets of Valen were eerily silent, emptied by fear. Shutters were nailed shut, doors barred. Only shadows walked the cobblestones, shadows, and the threat of wolves. Kalen kept her close, his large frame moving like a shield between her and every dark corner. Alara's breath came fast, her ears straining for the scrape of claws or the growl of teeth. At the far end of the square, a howl rose, answered by another across the rooftops. Alara froze. "They're surrounding us," she gasped. Kalen pulled her into a side alley, narrow and dark. "Yes. But they don't know the streets as I do. I studied their paths while I was chained. I counted every guard step, every patrol. Their arrogance blinded them to the slave they thought broken." Alara's chest tightened. Even as a prisoner, he had planned escape. Even in chains, he had prepared for this night. The alley twisted sharply, ending at a crumbling wall. Alara's steps faltered. "There's no way out." Kalen released her hand and leapt. His fingers caught the edge of the wall, muscles flexing as he pulled himself up in a single movement. For a heartbeat, he was a shadow against the moon. He reached down, extending a hand. "Take it." Alara shook her head, breathless. "I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "Or would you rather stay for them?" The snarls behind them left no room for hesitation. Alara grabbed his hand. His grip closed around hers, iron strong, pulling her upward as though she weighed nothing. She scrambled over the wall, landing hard on the other side, hard in her throat. Kalen dropped beside her, silent as falling snow. "Move," he ordered, his tone brooking no argument. They ran. Through winding backstreets, over fences, across shadow-drenched courtyards. Alara's lungs burned, her legs ached, but Kalen never slowed. He knew the way, guiding her with a surety that made her wonder how long he had studied every twist and turn of this city. But the wolves were relentless. Their howls closed in, echoing like drums of war. Claws scraped rooftops above, shadows flitted through alleys beside them. The hunters were playing with their prey, herding them toward the gates. By the time the city's outer wall loomed, Alara's strength was fraying. She stumbled, catching herself against the cold stone. "I can't." Kalen caught her arm, his eyes fierce. "You can. The bond won't let you break. Not while I breathe." His words lit something inside her, hot and frightening. Her legs trembled, but she forced herself upright, clinging to his strength as though it were her own. The gates were shut tight, iron-bound and locked. Guards stood above, their torches flickering in the night wind. Kalen's jaw clenched. "We won't make it through the front. Too exposed." He pulled her toward a smaller postern gate, half hidden in the shadows of the wall. But before they reached it, figures dropped from the rooftops. 5 wolves. half-shifted, snarling, their golden eyes glowing in the dark. Alara's breath caught in her throat. She pressed back against the wall as Kalen stepped forward, placing himself between her and the pack. "Stand aside, slave," one of them sneered. "Hand over the human, and we may grant you a swift death." Kalen's voice was low, deadly calm. "Come and try." The wolves lunged. The alley exploded into chaos, snarls, claws, the crash of bodies against stone. Kalen moved with terrifying speed, his fists striking like hammers, shadows swirling around him like a living storm. He caught one wolf mid-leap, slamming him into the ground so hard the stone cracked. Another's claw raked his shoulder, drawing blood, but Kalen didn't falter. Alara's back pressed against the wall, her hands trembling. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. Every time a wolf lunged, her heart seized, the bond tugging violently as though her own body would break if Kalen fell. One wolf broke past his defense, rushing toward her with teeth bared. Alara screamed, and shadows burst from her hands. The wolf slammed into an invisible force, thrown backward into the wall. The darkness writhed around her fingers, unfamiliar and wild, before dissipating like smoke. She stared at her trembling hands in horror. What was that?" Kalen glanced back, silver eyes blazing with something between pride and urgency. "The bond," he growled. "It awakens what sleeps in you." Before she could process it, he struck down the last wolf, sending him fleeing with the others limping at his side. Blood dripped from Kalen's arm, his chest heaving, but he stood victorious. The alley fell silent again, broken only by Alara's ragged breathing. She pressed her back to the wall, trembling. I can't do this." Kalen stepped toward her, his shadow falling over hers. He caught her chin gently, tilting her face toward his. "You already did. You faced them. You fought." And the bond answered. Tears burned her eyes. "I don't want this bond." His gaze softened, though his voice remained unyielding. "Neither did I. But fate cares nothing for what we want. Only what we are." For a heartbeat, the air between them was electric, charged with something that terrified and drew her all at once. Then Kalen turned, his voice sharp again. "We must go. More will come." Together, they slipped through the postern gate, vanishing into the wild fields beyond. Behind them, Dalen's walls loomed dark against the sky, the city shrinking with every step they took. The mountains rose in the distance, jagged and black beneath the moon. And somewhere out there, rivals plotted, enemies gathered, and destiny waited. Alara clutched her shawl tighter, the phantom heat of shadows still lingering on her hands. Whatever lay ahead, there would be no return. Her life was no longer her own. It belonged to the bond, and to the Alpha who refused to let her go. The fields beyond the city stretched endless beneath the moonlight. Grass whispered against Alara's legs as she stumbled across the uneven ground, her lungs aching from the run. Behind her, Dalen's dark walls shrank into the distance, torches flickering faintly along its battlements. Kalen moved ahead with unyielding strength, every stride purposeful, his silver eyes scanning the horizon. He seemed tireless, carved from stone and shadow, while Alara's body screamed for rest. Her feet caught on a rock, sending her sprawling. She gasped, trying to rise, but Kalen was already there. He pulled her up with one strong arm, steadying her. "You must push further," he said firmly, though his tone was gentler than before. "The wolves will not stop at the walls. They will track us into the night." Alara's chest heaved. I can't keep running like this." Kalen studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then we walk, but we do not stop." He adjusted his pace, slowing enough for her to keep stride beside him. His presence at her side, tall and solid, gave her strength she hadn't known she still possessed. Hours passed. The night air grew colder, mist curling low over the grasslands. Insects sang from the darkness, but no human sounds followed. Only occasionally did the distant echo of a howl remind them that the hunt had not ended. At last, the land sloped upward into rocky hills, where trees grew twisted and sparse. Kaelin led her beneath a cluster of stone outcroppings, sheltered from the open plain. He stopped, finally allowing her to rest. Alara sank to the ground, pulling her shawl tighter around herself. Her body trembled with exhaustion. "Why do they want me?" she whispered. Kaelin crouched near the rocks, his eyes sharp as he listened to the night. "Because you are the bond. Breaking you breaks me. And if they destroy me, they cripple the line I carry." His words sent a shiver down her spine. She shook her head. "But I'm just a woman. I'm not a warrior, or royalty, or... You are mine." The words rumbled out of him, deep and absolute. Her breath caught. She hated how those words sparked heat in her chest, hated how her pulse leapt in answer. She wanted to deny him, to tear the invisible thread binding her to him, but she couldn't. The bond throbbed between them, undeniable. Kaelin's gaze softened slightly. "I know this is not what you wanted. I know you fear it. But fate is never gentle. It gives no one the life they expect." Alara looked away, blinking against the sting in her eyes. "You don't understand. I gave up that ring because I wanted to be free of my past. Now it feels like I've traded one chain for another." Kaelin was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into the shadows, pulling out one of the broken shackles from the market, iron bent and twisted by his strength. He held it up between them. "This is a chain," he said quietly. "What binds us is not." Alara's throat tightened. She stared at the broken metal, then at the man before her, scarred and unyielding yet speaking with unexpected tenderness. She wanted to believe him. But how could she, when every choice seemed stolen from her hands? Her thoughts scattered as a sound rippled through the night, movement in the grass. Kaelin's head snapped up, his body tensing. Shadows coiled around him like smoke. "Stay close," he whispered. Figures emerged from the mist. But they weren't wolves. At least, not rivals. 3 cloaked shapes stepped into the moonlight, their faces hidden, their movements careful. One lifted a hand in peace. "Kaelin of the Shadowborn," the figure said in a low voice. "We heard whispers. That you lived. That you claimed a mate." Kaelin's stance didn't relax. "Who are you?" "Loyalists," the figure answered. "Those who never bent knee to the rival alphas. We followed your scent when the chains broke. We are here to guide you home." Alara's breath caught. "Allies?" For the first time since the market, hope stirred in her chest. But Kaelin's voice was cautious. "And if you lie?" The figure lowered their hood, revealing pale eyes and markings like Kaelin's, though fainter. "Then I would not be standing here still breathing." The tension broke slightly. Kaelin straightened, though shadows still curled faintly at his shoulders. "Then guide us. The wolves are hunting." The loyalists moved quickly, leading them through the hills into thicker woods. Alara followed, stumbling but determined, Kaelin never leaving her side. The forest swallowed them, mist curling between gnarled trunks, the moon barely piercing the canopy above. As they walked, Alara leaned closer to Kaelin. "Do you trust them?" His answer was quiet but steady. "Not fully. But for now, they are a path through the dark. And we need every path we can find." She nodded, though unease twisted in her stomach. The bond pulsed again, stronger here in the wild, as though the very earth recognized it. Shadows stirred when she walked too near the trees, whispering at her fingertips, and she shoved her hands into her shawl to hide the trembling. Hours later, the group reached a hidden cave at the base of the mountains. Inside, a fire already smoldered, its smoke vanishing through cracks in the stone. The loyalists settled, watchful and silent, leaving Alara and Kaelin to one side. Alara sat near the fire, her body heavy with fatigue. Kaelin knelt beside her, examining the scratches on her arms from the run. His touch was careful, but every brush of his fingers sent sparks racing through her veins. "You're trembling," he said softly. "I'm cold," she whispered back. He studied her a moment longer, then removed the tattered cloak from his shoulders and draped it around her. The warmth of it enveloped her, carrying his scent, pine, steel, storm. Her breath caught. The bond surged, hot and insistent, until she could feel his heartbeat as clearly as her own. Kaelin's voice was rough when he spoke again. Rest, Elara. Tomorrow, the path grows harder. Her eyes fluttered shut despite the chaos in her chest. As sleep pulled her under, one truth burned clear in her mind. The bond wasn't just real. It was growing stronger. The cave smelled of smoke and damp stone, its walls painted orange by the flickering fire. Outside, the night wind howled faintly through the crags of the mountains, carrying with it the distant, mournful calls of wolves. Elara sat wrapped in Kaelin's cloak, staring at the flames. Every time she blinked, she saw the market again, the chains, the ring, his declaration. She is mine. The words still burned against her skin, as if etched there. Across the fire, the loyalists murmured to one another in low voices, their pale eyes occasionally glancing toward her. She could feel the weight of their stares, their unspoken questions. Why her? Why had Kaelin chosen a human? Kaelin returned from the cave mouth, his movements silent as shadow. He crouched beside her, setting a piece of dried meat and a skin of water at her side. Eat, he said. Her hand shook slightly as she took the food. Her appetite was gone, but her body was too weak to refuse. She nibbled at it, the salty flavor grounding her. Silence stretched between them until she could no longer bear it. Why did they call you Kaelin of the Shadowborn? She asked quietly. His eyes flickered, silver catching the firelight. Because that is my blood. I am no common wolf, Elara. I am of the royal line. The words sank into her like stones into water. Royal. He nodded slowly. My father was king of the Shadowborn. My mother, queen. I was their heir. But when I defied their decrees, when I sought to end the endless wars with the rival packs, they branded me a traitor. My own kin put a bounty on my head. The rivals captured me before I could return. Elara's chest tightened. She thought of the chains, the humiliation of the market, and suddenly it all looked different. He hadn't just been a warrior enslaved. He had been a prince in chains. Why tell me this? She whispered. His gaze locked with hers, intense and unyielding. Because you are bound to me now. You must know what it means. Elara looked down at her hands, remembering the shadows that had burst from them in the alley. They still felt tainted, trembling with power that didn't belong to her. I'm no queen, she murmured. Kaelin leaned closer, his voice low, threading through the fire's crackle. You are my mate. That is more than crown or throne. That is fate. Her heart stumbled. She opened her mouth to reply, but one of the loyalists shifted closer. An older woman with sharp features and pale eyes like frost. You speak of fate, the woman said, her voice steady, but fate is fragile. The rival alpha will not allow you to keep her, Kaelin. He knows what it means if your bond strengthens. He will move soon, with more than scouts this time. Kaelin's jaw tightened. Let him come. I will not yield. The woman shook her head. Pride alone cannot shield you. She is human-born. She cannot endure what is coming. Elara bristled, her voice trembling but firm. I'm still here, aren't I? I've survived more than you think. The woman's eyes softened, but pity lingered there. Surviving the city is not the same as surviving the mountains. Or the bond. Already it awakens in you. Soon it will demand more than you can give. Elara swallowed hard, unable to deny the truth. Every time Kaelin touched her, every time his eyes met hers, she felt the bond's pull growing stronger. It was like a second heartbeat, a tether she could neither cut nor loosen. Kaelin rose to his full height, casting a long shadow against the cave wall. Enough, he said, his voice carrying command. She is mine. No rival will take her. No bond will break her. The loyalists bowed their heads, falling silent. Alara's chest ached as she looked at him. She is mine. He said it like a vow, like an oath sealed in blood. Part of her hated it. Part of her longed for it. When the loyalists turned away, Kalen knelt beside her again, softer now. His hand brushed against hers, warm and steady. Do not let their words shake you. You are stronger than you know. But Alara shook her head, tears burning her eyes. I felt it, Kalen. In the alley. When the shadows came. That wasn't me. That was something else. It was the bond, he said simply. It ties your soul to mine. Through it, my strength flows into you. But it does not replace your will. It awakens what sleeps. Her voice cracked. And if I don't want it to wake? For the first time, pain flickered in his eyes. He reached up slowly, his calloused hand cupping her cheek. The bond surged at his touch, heat flooding through her veins until she shivered. Then fight it, he whispered. But know this, Alara. The more you fight, the more it will hurt. For both of us. The fire crackled louder in the silence that followed. Alara closed her eyes, torn between the warmth of his hand and the terror curling in her chest. Before she could speak, a sound echoed from outside, a howl, low and drawn out, followed by answering cries. The loyalists leapt to their feet, hands on weapons. They've found us, one hissed. Kalen's silver eyes hardened. He stood, drawing Alara up with him. Stay behind me, he ordered. Shadows stirred at his command, coiling around his arms like living smoke. The bond thrummed in Alara's chest, wild and insistent. She could feel his pulse racing through her veins, his fury simmering in her bones. The rival wolves' growls grew louder, filling the night. Their scent hit the cave before their eyes appeared, the stench of blood and iron. Kalen stepped forward, his voice a growl that shook the stones. Let them come. Alara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break. For the first time, she understood, this wasn't just Kalen's fight anymore. The bond tied her to it too, and whether she wanted it or not, the shadows were already waking inside her. The cave trembled with the weight of growls outside, low and rolling, like thunder trapped within stone. The fire sputtered under the press of their presence, shadows dancing wildly across the walls. Alara stood frozen near the flames, her breath shallow, her heart hammering so loud she feared the rivals could hear it. The bond inside her pulsed violently, demanding she move, demanding she stay at Kalen's side. The loyalists readied themselves, blades drawn, eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. But Kalen stepped forward first, broad shoulders tense, silver eyes burning brighter than the moon. His voice cut through the cave like a blade. Come no closer. The growls outside swelled into mocking laughter. A figure stepped into the fire's edge, half-shifted, his golden eyes gleaming with cruel delight. Behind him, dozens more shapes prowled in the dark, claws scraping against stone, teeth flashing. Well, the rival alpha drawled. He was taller than most, his face crisscrossed with scars that glowed faintly under the moonlight. The slave still lives. And claims a mate. His eyes shifted to Alara, sharp and cruel. A human, no less. Kalen growled low in his throat, shadows coiling tighter around his arms. Leave her out of this, Marduk. Your quarrel is with me. Marduk's grin widened, showing sharp teeth. Oh, Kalen. That's where you're wrong. Everything is with her. Kill the human, and the bond unravels. Break the bond, and you crumble. And when you crumble, the last prince of the Shadowborn dies. Alara's blood ran cold. She pressed back against the cave wall, her fingers trembling against the stone. The rival wolves surged forward. The cave erupted into chaos. Loyalists met the charge, steel clashing against claws, snarls, and screams filling the air. Shadows flickered wildly as Kalen hurled himself into the fray, his fists striking like thunder, his movements fast and brutal. He caught one wolf mid-leap, slamming him into the ground so hard the stone cracked, then turned, ripping another off a loyalist's back with a roar. Alara! Kalen barked. Stay down, but staying down was impossible. A wolf broke through the line, his golden eyes locked on her, his claws dripping shadow. Alara screamed, stumbling back, hands raised. And shadows burst from her palms. They weren't Kalen's shadows, dark and controlled. These were wild, jagged, lashing like whips. They struck the wolf mid-charge, flinging him across the cave and into the wall with a bone-shattering crack. The entire battle seemed to pause. Wolves turned their heads. Loyalists stared. Even Kalen froze for a heartbeat, his silver eyes blazing with shock and recognition. Alara's chest heaved, her hands trembling as the last wisps of shadow dissolved into the air. I didn't mean. Marduk's laugh split the cave. So the human carries the bond in her blood. How precious. How fragile. He lunged forward, faster than the others, claws slashing toward her. Kalen roared, but Alara moved first. The bond surged through her veins, igniting every nerve. She raised her hands and screamed, and shadows erupted again, not whips this time, but a barrier, thick and solid, slamming between her and Marduk's strike. His claws screeched against it, sparks flying. His golden eyes widened. Impossible. Kalen was there an instant later, slamming into Marduk with bone-crushing force. The two alphas collided like storms, the cave shaking with their struggle. Shadows and claws tore the air, their roars echoing through the stone. The loyalists pressed harder, renewed by Alara's display. Wolves fell one by one, snarls turning to whimpers as they were forced back toward the cave mouth. Alara stood trembling, her body aching, her hands still glowing faintly with shadow. She had no idea how she'd done it. She had no idea if she could do it again. But the bond inside her thrummed, alive, as if it had always been there, waiting for this moment. Kalen slammed Marduk against the wall, shadows choking the rival alpha's throat. You will not touch her, he growled, his voice like stone cracking. Marduk wheezed, golden eyes narrowing. This isn't over, Kalen. You've tied yourself to weakness. And weakness always breaks. With a sudden twist, Marduk slipped free, retreating into the dark with his remaining wolves. Their howls echoed as they fled, promising return. The cave fell silent except for the ragged breathing of the survivors. The loyalists slumped against the walls, bloodied but alive. Alara sank to the ground, her chest heaving, her hands trembling violently. Kalen strode to her, his shadows fading as he dropped to one knee before her. His silver eyes searched hers, fierce and unyielding. You felt it, he said softly. Didn't you? Alara's throat worked, words catching. Finally, she whispered, yes. The bond awakens you, Kalen said. It will not stop now. You are no longer only human. You are mine, and through me, of the Shadowborn. Her heart stuttered painfully. She wanted to deny it, to push the words away. But she could still feel the shadows inside her veins, humming, alive. Tears welled in her eyes. What if I don't want it? Kalen's gaze softened, though his voice remained steady. Then fight it. Hate me for it, if you must. But you cannot change what is. The bond is forged. And it will only grow stronger. Alara closed her eyes, trembling as the truth pressed down on her. The bond was no chain. It was a fire, and she was already burning. The cave still smelled of blood and iron. Ash from the fire drifted lazily into the cracks in the ceiling, and the faint groans of injured loyalists echoed off the stone walls. Outside, the night was eerily silent, the rivals had gone, but their absence carried no comfort. Alara sat near the dying flames, her hands trembling as she stared at her palms. Hours had passed since the shadows had burst from her, but she could still feel them, faint sparks beneath her skin, humming like bees trapped in glass. She had lived her whole life in silence, unnoticed, unremarkable. Now the shadows whispered at the edge of her thoughts. Across the fire, Kalen spoke quietly with the loyalists, his tall frame hunched to fit beneath the cave ceiling. His voice was low, commanding, though weariness threaded through it. He bore fresh scars from the fight, but he carried them as if they weighed nothing. One of the loyalists, the older woman who had doubted her, approached Alara. She crouched beside her, pale eyes sharp. "You wield shadows," she said flatly. Alara shook her head quickly. "I didn't mean to. I don't even know how." "You did." The woman's voice cut her off. "And if you don't learn to control it, it will consume you." Alara's breath caught. "Consume me?" Kalen's voice answered from across the cave. "The bond is alive. It does not wait for permission. It grows. And if she resists, it will tear at her from within." He crossed the cave, his silver eyes fixed on her. Alara looked away, heat crawling up her neck. "I never asked for this," she whispered. Kalen crouched before her, his presence filling her senses. "Neither did I. But fate does not wait for asking." He took her trembling hands in his grip steady, grounding. "You must learn. If you do not, the shadows will answer your fear instead of your will." The older woman nodded grimly. "Training begins at dawn." Alara's stomach twisted. She had never trained for anything in her life. She had sewn, mended, survived. But the thought of shadows spilling uncontrolled from her again made her blood run cold. Dawn crept gray and cold through the mountains. Mist coiled along the jagged peaks, carrying the bite of early frost. The loyalists formed a rough circle outside the cave, blades in hand, watching. Alara stood in the center, Kalen at her side. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the birdsong. She had slept little, haunted by visions of shadows bursting from her chest and drowning her. "Close your eyes," Kalen instructed softly. Alara hesitated, then obeyed. "Breathe," he said. "Feel the bond. Not with fear. With focus. Find the thread between us." She tried. At first, all she felt was her own heartbeat, frantic and wild. But slowly, another rhythm emerged beneath it, steady and strong. His heartbeat. Kalen's. She could feel it through the bond, pulsing like a tether between them. "Now," Kalen murmured, "call the shadows." Gently. Like coaxing a flame, not stoking a fire. Alara raised her trembling hands. The air around her shivered. Wisps of shadow coiled at her fingertips, thin and wavering. She gasped, fear spiking. The shadows lashed out, cracking the earth at her feet. Loyalists flinched. Alara stumbled back. "I can't." Kalen caught her wrists, steadying them. His voice was calm but firm. "Yes, you can. Breathe. Do not fear it, command it." Her chest heaved. "What if it destroys me?" His silver eyes blazed. "Then it destroys me too. And I will not allow that." Something in his tone, in the unbreakable certainty of it, steadied her. She closed her eyes again, forcing breath into her lungs. The shadows returned, curling softly around her fingers this time, like smoke drawn to flame. They obeyed. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough. The loyalists murmured, astonished. Kalen released her wrists slowly, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Good," he said quietly. "You see? It answers you." Alara opened her eyes. The shadows dissolved into mist, leaving only the tremble of her hands. Relief crashed over her, mingled with exhaustion. Again, the older woman ordered. Kalen shot her a look. "Enough for now. She is not a soldier to be broken. She is bond-marked." The woman bowed her head reluctantly. Alara's chest swelled with conflicting emotions, gratitude, resentment, and a dangerous flicker of longing as she met Kalen's gaze. Far away, in the rival stronghold, Marduk sat upon a throne of bone and stone. His golden eyes gleamed as his wounded wolves knelt before him, trembling with their report. She wielded shadow, one rasped, clutching his broken ribs. "The human." The bond gave it to her. Marduk leaned forward, lips curling into a smile. "Then it is true. She is no mere seamstress. The bond makes her more." Another wolf bowed his head. She is dangerous. Then we make her a weapon, Marduk said coldly. Or we break her and scatter her pieces across the mountains. He rose, his scarred form towering. Send word to the packs. We march at moonrise. The prince thinks fate favors him. We will show him that fate bows to those strong enough to seize it. That night, Alara sat by the fire, her body aching from training. The loyalists slept, but she could not. The shadow still hummed under her skin, restless. She turned when she felt him approach. Kalen lowered himself beside her, silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. You're afraid of what you're becoming. Alara stared into the fire. I don't want to lose myself. Every time the shadows come, I feel less human. His gaze was steady. You are not losing yourself. You are finding the part of you that was always hidden. She shook her head. And if I don't want it? Kalen's voice dropped, softer than she had ever heard it. Then I will carry it for both of us. Until you're ready. Her chest tightened painfully. She wanted to tell him not to say things like that it made the bond pull harder, that it terrified her. But instead, she whispered, Why me, Kalen? Why did fate choose me? His silver eyes met hers, burning with quiet intensity. Because you were strong enough to give up what bound you. And brave enough to set me free. Her breath caught. The fire crackled between them, shadows dancing against their faces. For a moment, she forgot the war, the rivals, the bond's terror. For a moment, there was only him. But outside, far across the mountains, the rival packs gathered. War was no longer coming. It had already begun. The night of the blood moon bled across the mountains in a wash of crimson light. The loyalists stood restless outside the cave, their blades gleaming red, their eyes reflecting the eerie glow. The air was heavy with anticipation, thick enough to choke on. Alara stood among them, her heart hammering so hard she felt it in her throat. Shadows whispered at her fingertips, coiling like restless serpents, ready but unpredictable. Training had steadied her, but not enough. She still feared the moment her power might slip from her control. Beside her, Kalen was a wall of iron and fire. His scars caught the moonlight, his silver eyes burned with quiet fury. The bond between them pulsed harder than ever, sharp and insistent, as if it knew what was coming. The howls began at the horizon. They rolled across the peaks, dozens, then hundreds, until the night itself seemed to shake with the sound. Alara's stomach dropped. Shadows shifted on the ridge, wolves pouring down in a flood of claws and teeth. Marduk's army. Kalen's voice cut through the fear. Hold the line. The loyalists braced themselves. Alara tried to mimic their readiness, her hands trembling, the shadows flickering faintly around her. The first wave hit like a storm. Wolves leapt into the circle, snarling, claws flashing. Steel met flesh, shadows tore through the air. The battlefield became chaos. Alara barely had time to breathe before one broke through, lunging straight at her. Instinct moved faster than thought. Her shadows whipped out, striking the wolf mid-leap and slamming him into the ground. The impact rattled her bones, but the power obeyed. For once, it obeyed. Kalen was a whirlwind nearby, his fists and shadows tearing through attackers with brutal precision. Every time he struck, the bond inside her flared, heat rushing through her veins, as if his fight fueled hers. But then she felt it, a sharp tug in her chest, painful, wrong. Her gaze snapped up, and her blood ran cold. Marduk. He strode into the battlefield, larger than the others, his golden eyes glowing with cruel fire. His claws dripped with shadow, and the wolves seemed to part around him, giving space for their alpha. His gaze locked on hers instantly. The bond has made you stronger, he called, his voice carrying over the chaos. But it has also made you weak. Break it, and you'll crumble. Kalen roared, shoving through the melee to meet him. You'll not touch her. Marduk's grin was all teeth. Then let her watch you die. The two alphas collided with a sound like thunder. The earth shook beneath the force of their strikes, shadows tearing through the air in violent waves. Wolves stumbled back from the sheer power of it, their snarls fading to fearful whines. Alara's chest ached with every blow Kaelin took. She felt his pain, sharp and cutting, as if it were her own. The bond burned, threatening to tear her in half. She couldn't stand by. Her shadow surged wildly, spilling across the battlefield. Loyalists gasped as the darkness coiled into spears, slamming into rival wolves and sending them sprawling. She barely knew what she was doing, but the bond guided her, Kaelin's heartbeat echoing in her veins. But Marduk was too strong. He slammed Kaelin into the ground, claws raking across his chest. Kaelin roared in agony, the sound ripping through her soul. No! Alara screamed. Shadows burst from her, wild and uncontrollable. They struck Marduk like a storm, flinging him backward. The entire battlefield froze, wolves and loyalists alike staring at her as the darkness spiraled around her like a living thing. Marduk rose, blood streaking his jaw, his grin twisted. So the little human thinks she can play alpha. Alara's knees buckled, the power burning too hot, threatening to consume her. She felt herself slipping, drowning in it. Then Kaelin's hand was on hers, steady and strong. His voice broke through the storm. Breathe, Alara. With me. Don't fight it alone. Their eyes met, silver and dark, bond blazing between them. She inhaled. He exhaled. Together, the shadows steadied. For the first time, they weren't hers or his. They were theirs. The power surged outward, a tidal wave of shadow that swept across the battlefield. Wolves were thrown back, howling, the ground itself cracking beneath the force. Marduk staggered, his grin finally faltering. The loyalists rallied, striking with renewed fury. The rivals broke, retreating under the weight of the bond-forged storm. Howls of defeat echoed into the mountains as they fled into the night. Silence fell, broken only by ragged breaths. Alara collapsed to her knees, shaking violently. The shadows faded, leaving her drained and trembling. Kaelin knelt beside her, blood streaking his chest, but his silver eyes burned with fierce pride. You see now, he said softly. The bond isn't weakness. It's strength neither of us could reach alone. Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to cling to her fear. But she couldn't. Not after feeling that power, that unity. Still, she whispered, and if it destroys us? Kaelin's gaze softened, though his voice remained firm. Then we'll fall together. But I swear to you, Alara, it will not. She closed her eyes, tears hot against her cheeks. For the first time, she let the bond's warmth settle inside her, no longer resisting. Above them, the blood moon blazed red across the sky. The battle was won. But war had only just begun.